Peace be with you. The only worse thing than lack of knowledge is the appearance of knowledge. People who know that they don't know can learn, but people who think they know cannot. Whether you read the Bible or the Quran, you will see that ignorance has been the greatest enemy of human beings from the beginning of time. Whether it's on a personal level or on a societal level, ignorance has been a destructive force throughout human history. All of us are indoctrinated. We have to understand this. When we are born, we are a blank slate and somebody's going to write on it. Somebody's going to indoctrinate us into a culture. Somebody's going to indoctrinate us into ways of thinking, and they're going to tell us that this is a good thing to do. One thing that got me out of my atheist slumber is a thought that came to my mind. This is what began my conversion to Islam ultimately. Why do you believe the things that you believe? Asking ourselves why we think this is a good thing is a necessary part of life, and actually reflecting on all the things that we have been taught is essential. It is absolutely essential. It doesn't matter who you think you are or what you think your religion is. Asking yourselves why these things are the way they are is the difference between ignorance and knowledge. As with the societies that preceded us, societies that have been mentioned in the Bible and the Quran, societies that consequently God destroyed for their abominations because they practiced abominations based on their ignorance, we are in a same time now. We are in a time of ignorance, which in Arabic is termed Jahiliyyah. Why do I say this? All we have to do is really recognize that everything that we are being told is right is actually wrong, and we can easily see that it's wrong if we just consider the consequences. I'm going to go through some principles that God has commanded, and people can see for themselves why God commands these things and why these things are good. There is a concept called Sirat al-Mustaqim, or the straight path, that is described in the Quran, and this is in the 6th chapter of the Quran, verses 151 to 153. There's also a concept called hikmah, which is also described in the Quran as something great, and it reiterates all these points that are found in the 6th chapter of the Quran, verses 151 to 153, and this concept of hikmah is in the 17th chapter of the Quran. They talk about the same things. They talk about processes and behaviors that human beings need in order to succeed, have successful societies, and not just successful societies, but succeed in their personal lives as well. When God talks about this, first thing God says is that we have to worship only God. There is no God but God, and we have to submit only to God. Well, ignorance tells you that God, because he says this, is oppressive, that you are now a slave and that you are restricted and that you are not free. But if you simply consider the existence of societies, is you're not free anyways. You pay taxes, you are subject to rules and regulations that you had no hand in creating, and that's simply it. You are going to be subjugated no matter what. You are going to serve someone, whether it's God or your political class. You have no choice in that. But God is predictable and God is benevolent. So God wants you to only abstain from things that injure you or your neighbors. Whereas if you leave the government to be in charge of that and take God out of it, your rules all of a sudden become unpredictable and are based on a whims of a ruler who may turn out to be like Nero, for example, in ancient Rome, who will subjugate people and treat them terribly. So that's ignorance. To believe that to believe that obeying God or submitting to God is worse than submitting to your political elite is just ignorance. The consequences of one are goodness, and the consequences of the other are just serving tyrants. The next thing I want to talk about is family structure. Here in the United States of America, for example, or in the West in general, you see complete breakdown of family structure where kids are indoctrinated through popular culture, media, education, all of it, to disrespect their parents. And the consequence is the breakdown of a family unit, and that in of itself makes your kids more susceptible to outside influence, and they will be more likely to fail, more likely to end up locked up in jail, more likely to experiment with drugs. So again, this is ignorance. God says in the Quran, do not say as much as oof to your parents. This is a sentiment that should be fostered. The Bible is even more strict in that. It says that if children disobey their parent, that they should be essentially harmed. But the Quran tells us, if one or both of your parents reach old age with you, do not say as much as oof to them and address them with respect. It reinforces the family unit which benefits the children and the parent. If you are a parent, all of us want our kids to be respectful to us. And if you are a child, being respectful to your parents will certainly protect you to a great degree and bring you a great amount of benefits through guidance and support and all that. Another thing that God forbids us, for example, in the Quran and in the Bible, of course, is what's in Arabic called zina or fornication. Now, fornication is promoted as a matter of enlightenment in the West, but is it? No, it is just ignorance because it's harmful. If you consider sexually transmitted diseases, if you consider the very concept that they claim to be fighting out here in the West, the devaluation of women and objectification of women is actually reinforced, again, through popular media, culture, and encouraging these behaviors, so women could devalue themselves and objectify themselves for the benefit of men who have no fear of God, who are only governed by their carnal desires. If you consider that people like Jeffrey Epstein would have no power in a society where zina, which is in Arabic means fornication or sexual immorality, is forbidden, his billions would not help him because the culture of people would not allow that. So not only is the consequence of such behavior destruction or subjugation of women, it is also destructive to society because, again, women are mostly harmed by this behavior because now they get put in position where they may even have to kill their children, their unborn children. And ignorance is to call this act abortion, to hide it behind language. They say, oh, well, it's not alive. It is alive. If we found some cells on Mars, we would celebrate life, finding extraterrestrial life. But if we found millions of cells doing what cells do, and even a heartbeat in a woman's uterus, we say that that is not alive and that is not killing, which is absolute ignorance. Again, it is pretend knowledge, where it is absolute ignorance. Another consequence on society of this kind of behavior, of course, is the sexually transmitted disease epidemic, and you can see this exploding all throughout the West. Sexually transmitted diseases are having a resurgence of catastrophic proportions. And the way we could simply cure all sexually transmitted diseases for free is to practice what God commanded and be in marriages and not be hedonistic and despicable in our behavior. God also commands justice. God says in the Quran, stand firmly for justice as witnesses to God, even against yourselves or your family or parents. That in the Bible is described as the greatest commandment. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. God commands this. And to put anything above this commandment, such as material gain or anything like that, again, is ignorance. So how we live, how we behave, how we talk, God demands we talk a certain way with humility and kindness. You cannot have unity of people who cannot talk to each other normally and kindly. Again, to believe anything else is ignorance. So because this video is getting long, I have many other examples, but because this video is getting long, I'm going to end it here. But this is the difference between knowledge and ignorance. What God has revealed is knowledge, and what they want you to believe is modern or enlightened is actually ignorance if you simply look at the consequences of these actions. This is why I submit to God, because God wants me to think about things and consider why I'm doing them or why I am forbidden from doing them. That is knowledge. Ignorance is just putting lipstick on a pig, saying, yeah, this is a good thing. But if you just simply sit down and look at the consequences of that kind of behavior, that kind of mindset, that kind of mentality, then you realize you are destroying not only yourself, but your community. The greatest battle currently in the world is the battle between ignorance and knowledge. Ignorance is a pig with a lipstick, and knowledge is knowledge. Peace be with you.